Mhm. Welcome everyone. Unfortunately, our live stream to Facebook today is not active. So although Facebook is out there, you don't get to see the fun and games of today. But anyway, I'm Chris Dobbin and I'm thrilled to welcome you to Amplify Your Brand, the series where we look at the way of building powerful brands in today's digital age. Along with my fellow friend and branding expert, Samoa there, you can see we share expertise and help you to take your brand to the next level. So whether you're an entrepreneur, a small business owner, a marketing professional, someone's just tinkering around with the idea of getting their personal brand out there, then this live stream is packed with practical insights and strategies that help you amplify your brand and stand out in the digital age. So please get ready, take some notes, put what we talk about today, learn into action. And because by the end of this live stream, we'll have a clear roadmap of how we build a brand that truly resonates with your target audience. So again, thank you for joining us today. And let's find another way to amplify your brand. And today's topic is the way we get you from prospects to loyal advocates. So we're going to talk about the customer nurture journey, and we're going to uncover concrete assets in your inventory that understand the way to approach showcasing them to your target audience and explore the dynamics of their engagement with your brand. And Sim, even if you're a service-based business, you still have a product.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when we're talking about products today, underlining that will be services. So please, even if you're a service-based business, this is very relevant to you because you all have customers and you have a journey that you take them on, whichever way that is. And we did talk about this last week. That journey could be the dog, it could be a pet, but it's ultimately not. So we went through that. So please check out last week's episode where we explored that. But before we get into it, Sim, do you have anything you want to talk about with this topic?
Well, first of all, I want to hear from everybody who's listening on this. There are some glitches with Facebook. I've managed to fix my stream, so I'd love to know where you guys on Facebook are listening in from, what country, and what your time zone is. Secondly, you've just talked about services as a product. Basically, you want to make the experience as seamless as possible so that your customers become a little bit more than just customers and become followers. Because at the end of the day, and without revealing too much of what's coming up ahead in the presentation, you want to build a community rather than a client base, which is very cold, and experiencing the brand in a more loyal way will have to come through making them followers and connecting with them at more levels than just a commercial.
That's right. So we might as well get into it. So one of the first things, I guess let's get back to the basics of why we do what we do. So we developed a branding P8 branding program that's had 20 years of developing and upgrading based on our branding on identity framework. So it encompasses 8 critical sections of the brand, which we call the 8 Ps, an easy to understand and implement program that helps your business owners amplify your brand. You can see those 8 Ps on the screen, and we have been working through them over the number of weeks we've been doing it. And today, Sim is highlighting the fact we're talking about product today. He's down there in the corner, letting us know where we are. So let's overview what we're going to cover today. So we're going to have 3 things we're really going to focus on. One is understanding brand consistency and learning the importance of presenting your brand consistently along every touch point along the customer journey. We're going to talk about storytelling for the brand connection and discovering how storytelling can be a powerful tool in creating an emotional connection between your brand and your audience. And finally, we're going to look at strategic brand engagement. So we're going to look at ways we gain insights into strategic approaches for engaging with your audience that go beyond the transaction. So why do you need to understand your product offering? Well, it uncovers the concrete assets in your inventory, and understanding the approach showcases them to your target audience. And exploring these dynamics, the engagement with your brand goes up. So it builds ultimately longer customer relationships. Another thing that we really want to cover up here is how we understand your brand works together. So understanding the strategies and tactics, they will not only help you acquire new clients, but they also retain them for long term. So you don't miss those opportunities to gain valuable insights, actionable steps that supercharge the way your customer engage and obviously loyalty towards what you do. So the first one on the rank we're going to talk about is brand consistency. So understanding the importance of brand and consistency at your every touch point along the customer journey, it it allows us to delve into how to maintain a unified brand image and recognize trust. So the brand elements, we've talked about this in other episodes, everything from the logo down to, which we're going to touch on later, touch of tone and voice and things like that. But people kind of forget the journey that customers go on even before they buy. So like there's before I make a purchase, now I've purchased it and I'm now using the thing. And then there's an after sales, or not even after sales, it's an after experience that you want to, and we're going to get into this later in the episodes, but just you want your clients to be able to go out there and tell others about your product. And if you can,
correct, this happened. Sorry,
you go.
This happens on a number of levels. Like Chris mentioned, with the process of gaining trust, you want to obviously put your brand out there in ways that seem coherent, aligned, and strategic. That only means, without too much fluff around it, that only means that your product aligns with the values that you are. These values are reflected by your audience, and therefore you make the possible connection through that approach. Once a first transaction happens, you want to make sure that you maintain the consistency of their experience. And we talked about this many times before, so I'm just going to highlight it again. Branding is the process of creating an experience and delivering it consistently day in and day out. So back to where we left this example, when you have a first purchase, you then want to follow up, or you want to be able to make the experience continue being on the same note, at least by default, or even better, so that you can keep the relationship with your audience. The first purchase is a step in through the door, but now you're going to show them the house. And what does that house look? If it looked great from the outside and they actually stepped in, you now have the attention for long enough that you can keep exploring the house together and show them the ranges of services that you have, which are your product. Again, we're using the name product to apply to services, but that just means that you consistently created a service that it's been productized to the point of having the same delivery of experience all throughout the journey.
That's right. And we're going to touch on the first point of call when it comes to brand consistency, and this is your favorite element of what we talk about.
I love this one.
So you've talked about that. So it needs to go across all the branding materials, from logos to color schemes to typography. We've talked about this in other episodes. This consistency of these elements ensures your brand is easily recognizable and memorable. So it's no use having, even if we're talking about a product or a service, that we've gone through the stage of developing a fantastic logo, some great visuals, and then you choose to just randomly choose pink one day, blue the next, red the next. You just don't keep those colors consistency. And then especially, can you imagine the cost of changing your product? These days we don't deal with physical products as much as we used to. They used to be on everything, but there still is a number of products that use a physical component to box it, send it to you, all those kind of things. If that's the case, then if you had to change that every time you did a product run, the costs would be phenomenal. So obviously having it consistent, but then having it consistent in the storefront, and then your website is reflecting the same look and feel as that experience they're getting when they're physically touching it, has to be something you have to take into consideration. But these elements that I'm talking about all have a visual component to it. So obviously, Sim, I'll keep talking until you're ready. But yep, you're right.
I'm good. The main point here is visual component is hardwired into the human nature. This is a really interesting topic, because every now and again we come across people or situations where we discuss the importance of the visual appearance of things. And some people dismiss it because it's only the skin deep level of an experience, like you said. But what is really ingrained into us makes us have to trust visually in everything that we evaluate around us. And this comes back to our ancestry. Visually, we had to, in the Stone Ages, be able to make a quick assessment whether something that surrounds us is going to be beneficial to us or is going to try to kill us. So this is something that we can't not do. Evaluate visually, make decisions very quickly, and have those judgments happen at a synapse speed. So when you walk into the supermarket today, obviously you are bombarded with visual experiences everywhere you look, but you become accustomed and you've aligned with some of those visual experiences that represent brands. And like Chris mentioned, once you expect a certain level of delivery from the brand, you expect that consistency to happen at different levels. And that could be not just on the premises of that brand. Let's say if you walk into a shop and you buy a product from them, and then later on you receive a flyer from that shop promoting a new product. If the visuals don't line up with your previous experience, you're going to wonder who that brand is that just sent you a flyer. And like Chris mentioned, the cost of this, both monetarily speaking, it's going to cost that brand more to produce new items with a different set of visual attributes, whether that be in trust. That's going to be a very big cost to the brand because it keeps breaking and rebuilding that relationship with the audience. So, all this to say that visual is absolutely critical to maintain consistency in the delivery of that brand throughout the journey. The first one is the more immediate, is the one that we don't rationalize, we just see and quickly evaluate. And if the colors don't match, if the message doesn't align, if the logo looks different, listen, how would you feel if you went to your favorite club's games and every week they wore a different uniform? You just wonder what the hell's happening here. Who are these guys? Because from afar you can't see the faces, but you see the uniforms and the colors. And if there's a break in that consistency in communicating it, you're obviously going to lose trust over time and wonder, are they organized? Do they know what they're doing? Are they professionals enough? Why am I coming back to see this that it just keeps breaking the communication over and over? So in retrospect, visual identity is something that is very, very crucial for that first evaluation, building of trust, and first touch point in the customer journey.
That's right. And then that leads to a couple of things you did highlight in what you were talking about is now that we've got visual in place, tone and voice is important to understand the importance of doing this consistently in your messaging. So how you communicate your brand's values, your personality helps you build strong and relatable brand image. So I guess what we're touching on here is you've got some great visuals, you're doing it consistently, that's not enough. You've now got to back up those visuals with a way you communicate, and that can be audio, and it can also be just where you're positioning that product in the market and what you're doing with it. So these are things to consistently think about in the fact that great visuals get you so far, but you need to have great words and audio that go with that so that the visuals kind of, I don't know, sit there as a foundation to build upon, and then you layer on top of it something that says a certain way you go about communicating that, a certain personality trait that you sort of consistently do in a way that resonates with the audience and makes them feel great, and the brands back that up. Visuals back that up. So having that in place, and this is where, as much as people think you just jump onto ChatGPT and type in, write me something, it has to be in a certain way. And you need to resonate with that tone, because if that tone doesn't come, and I know ChatGPT can get there eventually maybe, but it's still, nothing beats you as a human doing it in face, in front of, or consistently with your audience, because they're essentially buying you, as in the humans behind the product. And we talk about this in other episodes about humanizing your product or your service, because that's what people buy, and they're buying you. So keep that in mind when we're talking about the fact that tone and voice. And I will move on to the next one here, which is obviously we touched on as well in what you were talking about, is the customer experience. So explore how interactions of your customer has a way of shaping the perception of your brand. So how can you do it consistently in a way of a quality of service, a user experience, or the way you deliver your product that reinforces the brand's relatability or reliability? This is something that people kind of forget about all the time, especially when you bring on new staff members, when you've got new, I guess, new launches of products. All these kind of things really do resonate with you if you don't understand the fact that the experience that someone's having with your brand isn't the one you are hoping, or it's not the one that you get. Then what happens is word of mouth will quickly get out there, and people won't be jumping on the top of a mountain and singing at the top of it your praises. So you get these three right: get the visual, get the tone of voice, and get that consistent experience happening, and you are well on your way to having a customer nurture journey that is going to be something that someone enjoys, resonates with them, and as we're going to talk about later, they will start becoming loyal advocates, and they'll be doing the working for you. So keep that in mind when it comes to your customer experience. So we're going to move on to the next part, and I really love this part about storytelling for brand connection. So it's a really powerful tool in creating an emotional connection between your brand and your audience. So if you do this by crafting and conveying a compelling brand story that resonates, your prospects and fosters will create loyalty. So this is an overlooked element of what people think about when it comes to branding, but it's not storytelling is in wafty words and just, telling a story for the hell of it. It actually has to have some punch to it, some meaning. I guess I'll talk about that in our next slide, but really understanding your story brand, unless Sim, you've got something to add to the story branding component. You're on mute, but loving that you're talking away there. He's back.
Yes. No, storytelling is absolutely crucial to come across as somebody relatable, or a brand that is relatable to. Otherwise, people would just list properties, features, technical descriptions, and sales would happen. That is no longer the case. That used to be the case many decades ago. And the more we realize that there is an effort to be put into describing what the brand does in a way that benefits the customer or the viewer or the potential audience, is how you go about storytelling. You weave the benefits of the product in a way that makes sense to the lives of those who that brand is touching upon. And before revealing too much, Chris, let's jump over to the next one.
We're talking about emotional appeal. So learn how to craft narratives that tap into your audience's emotions. So making your brand more relatable and memorable. So previously, before internet age, we only had a few mediums that really allowed you to get out there. And if you keep going back in time, it gets worse and worse because we didn't have TV, radio, and other elements like print material. It was word of mouth back in the day, so those kind of things. But these days we have the internet. So instantly your brand can get out there and resonate. And that doesn't mean it goes viral. That's not what we're talking about here. But the simple fact is you have a medium where you can build an audience, you can nurture it and take them on a customer journey. And if you get the storytelling behind that, so we've just talked about the visuals, the tone, and the experience. If you can now turn that into a story that people understand in a quick way, and they can buy into that story, they start to, and yourself, like if you get engrossed in a movie, you want to watch it to the end because you're just loving where it's taking you and on that journey you're going on. So it's the same when it comes to your branding. If you can get someone to buy into that sort of first 3 seconds of the movie that sort of goes, what just happened? And now you want to sit down and watch the rest of the film. That's where your branding and good storytelling comes in. So you capture them early on. They go buying into where you're going in the long-term journey, and they want to follow you to the end. So just keep that in mind in what is your story and how can you weave it into everything you do and bring in some kind of emotional appeal, that understanding to the target audience you're getting at. Now, you can't just make this up. So storytelling, everyone thinks about, let's make up a story. No, it's got to be authentic. So explore the role of authenticity in your storytelling. So how can you build trust with your viewers that will gain insights into how to be a true brand value and mission to your narrative. So we've talked about this in another live stream where we talked about the fact that you need to be authentic. You need to have that story. You need to understand it. But you can't just make up values and try to fake it to make it. It quickly unravels for you. So you've got to believe in what you're selling, as in the story.
Very good. You're describing this, and it comes to mind one particular episode, a story of mine, and I actually use that story to relate to an audience where I spoke at one group of entrepreneurs, and I looked at everything that was part of my experience, and I located a situation that could both serve them in the way that applied to the brand positioning of my services, and told them that they had to be emotionally connected to my situation. It was an authentic problem that I had that pulled in the audience. And this basically consisted of describing the entire ordeal that almost had me blocked at the Melbourne airport. I basically created a story around being arrested, being pulled into a room with 3 goons armed to their teeth, and all because I was carrying a weapon. So I'll leave it at that. This is a story for another day, but that's how I, for 15 minutes, arrested these people's attention. And at the end, I got a standing ovation. And the next day, I kept receiving messages from the audience. It was a very interesting observation in the way of storytelling.
Yeah, no, exactly. So coming back to authenticity, I mean, the thing is that you've got to, and when we go through our P8 program, we get you to think about these things. So we get you to look at what are your core values, what are the things that you can believe in, and what things, you know, resonate with you, so that when we put out the visuals, the tone, and the experience they're going to have, it's going to be an authentic one. It's not something that just comes from nowhere. There are many people who try to do this, especially influencers who try to fake it to make it. Eventually, the truth comes out. Eventually, it's going to be.
Eventually, the truth comes out.
That's right.
The internet is the great love.
That's right. And we've talked about this many times in previous episodes, but differentiation. So how can you effectively storytell to set your brand apart from your competitors? So we want you to think about how can you highlight what you do that makes your brand unique and how it communicates the distinctiveness through storytelling. And many ways, it's not that hard to find a distinctive way about this. It's either, especially when you really understand your core beliefs and values, you will instantly start to find things that resonate with you, and you can start telling that story. And what's interesting is we don't want to know your grandfather started the business and he handed it down to your father, and then you're the 3rd generation. It's not that kind of storytelling. It's more about the way that the business is developed and why it was developed, and what the core reasons for it still lasting those 3 generations. What was behind 3 generations surviving? They're the things that people are interested in. And you need to find a way to make that a value add as to why, you know, 3 generations happened and why that went through it, but not explain the great grandfather. It's more about there must have been something that got that through that 3 generations. There was a core thing that you were doing that resonated with the audience, and that's what buys into the next generation buying into it, because clearly it's gone through 3, but you need to stay relevant, as we talked about in another previous episode. Make sure that it's not something that's just a flash in the pan story. It's something that's going to be ongoing and a thing you can build on. So keep that in mind. Alrighty, so we're getting on to the 3rd element of this, and it's the strategic brand engagement. So when we're working with clients, we want to identify ways that we approach the engagement with your audience that goes beyond just the transaction. So what techniques can you use to foster genuine relationships and turn customers into brand advocates? So who authentically endorses and supports your brand? This is something that we touched on a little bit last week, but I think, again, people don't think about, like I touched on earlier, the before, the during, and then the after. Like, what is it that your brand can do? Is it something you can slip into the packaging either on the outside or the inside, that might resonate with your audience and give them an experience that they can't get from someone else? Is it something that after sales service you can do? Like, there's all sorts of things, but I'll leave it with you, Sim. Is there things you want to talk about with this one?
Well, given enough time, you will, and time and the space to think about this, and probably some perspective. Perspective comes from having more than one person thinking about this and deciding on how to strategically approach this topic. You will find that there is something that you do in your brand that is different from somebody else. And we've talked about this in the past. It does not necessarily have to mean better than, it just means different than. For example, Domino's, and we've brought this example up a few times in previous sessions. Domino's is very well known for one thing. They do pizza delivery very, very quickly, within 30 minutes, or you don't pay. It doesn't mean their pizza is better. It doesn't mean they source their ingredients locally. It doesn't mean it's from an old recipe of grandmother. It just promises a delivery under 30 minutes, or you don't pay. And there are many examples of differentiating the brand by being different, not necessarily better. So spend some time in looking at yourself. Spend some time in hearing feedback from other stakeholders, from staff members. Audit who sees you from the outside and ask them what they think your thing, that core thing that Chris just talked about is. How do they perceive you? Because we're very poor at having perspective of self. So this is where the asking for feedback from outside parties makes a lot of difference, because we gain the perspective of what we are to the outside world, seen from the inside in, from the outside in, sorry.
So let's get on to the first one about building relationships rather than just transactions. So learn how to consistently engage, communicate with your audience so you can foster long-term relationships. So like we're talking about, you've got the sale, it's just happened. You don't want to then just say, thanks, that's the customer, and off you go, right? Whether even if it is a product that once they buy it, you can't control their experience. But if you can find ways to encourage them, and this is what I was talking about, in your packaging, you might say, go here to get an upgrade or a bonus add-on, or give us feedback on your experience, whatever those things are. But you've got to try to keep the journey going with that relationship. So you've got to find places that these people go, places they explore after they use it, whatever it is, and then make sure you're popping up in those places so that journey that they're going on is something that the relationship can keep being nurtured. Keep reminding them that you're around and that if they ever need you, you're there. So you've got to find the way that you can keep in touch with that relationship, because majority of products and services have a journey that people are on. So you might meet them at one point, but then there's the next point they're going to get to, and you want to be there for that moment, whatever that moment is, with your product or service. So keep that in mind, that a relationship is not just one transaction and done. You are always looking for ways to keep the relationship going, because generally a good relationship with somebody will lead to you referring someone else to that relationship, because you're going, hey, this is a great time I'm having, whatever it is. I want to have someone else have that experience, and they want to tell them about it. So you've got to find ways, and we talked about this again last week, where there are different touch points where you can encourage somebody. And that's where, again, social media these days and online forums are allowing you ways to get in front of these people in ways that, 15, 20 years ago wasn't available, definitely 50 years ago wasn't available to you. And you've got access to that now. So you just need to understand your audience and the customer journey they're on, and then find ways to get in front of those touch points and build that relationship. So the next thing on that is community building, which I just touched on. So if there isn't a community, maybe you should build one. Otherwise, discover strategies that create brand communities with engaging the loyal customers. So explore the benefits of nurturing a dedicated customer base that advocates to your brand. So like I touched on, every product or service is going to have something different in the way that you look at this and explore this. But it is these days with online forums, with groups, with, I guess, TV shows that maybe you can't get access to the TV show and be on the ads that show when that TV show is showing. But you definitely know that after the show finishes, people go places, they do certain things, they have certain behaviors. You can then follow that behavior and be popping up when they're there. So a general these days is that people watch shows, but then they want to follow the page of that show, or there's a community where they have memes or memes, that pop up, or they have interactions about things. And I've got young kids these days, and I guarantee there's some groups that I would never have followed in my past life, but now that I have kids, I follow those things. So pre-COVID, I wasn't even into fish, by the way, and now I'm a fish guy. So these are just things, as I said, if you know these things about people, you can then follow them and maybe join groups and get into it. I know yourself, Sim, with the supplements and motorbikes and other things that you're into.
Yeah.
Like, if someone knows enough about you, like, there are things that they could do to put stuff in front of you that's relevant. Don't spam you, like, because that's the bad customer experience. We're talking about influence your next decision.
Well, this is very interesting and timely. You should be bringing this up because two reasons. One, never underestimate the point number one we just talked about, building relationships. Building relationships is where you want to spend a very, very good amount of time, because this will set up all the steps up to that. We're now in community building strategies. So hear this out. Once you have built a relationship, even if it is on a one-on-one level, and you will now have access to a point of entry to another community, to that one person that you've built a connection with, you're opening yourself up to more exposure. This is where, one, you need to have all your ducks aligned in terms of brand consistency, and that goes to your visual identity, voice and tone, and everything else that we've touched upon. The second point is that once you walk into that community, then you will find others. The point I'm trying to make is really, for example, markets. Local markets are an excellent way for brands to get known. Right now, I am waiting for tomorrow. There is going to be a once in a month fair that gets together at the docks here in Port Stevens, and I'm looking forward to going and finding the tent of two particular brands that I knew since I came through this point. Now, I also mentioned another example where fostering relationships is very useful, and I bring this up because before I knew there was even a community around the specific topic in fitness of supplements, and inside that that entire category, there is a subcategory of just pre-workouts. I found out that there's a number of YouTube channels that review supplements and pre-workouts on a regular basis. So because I built a relationship to a local supplier, this local supplier recently released two products, and I love both products. And it had just happened that last weekend I got chatting to the owner, to the reviewer of one of those YouTube channels, and asked him, "Do you know this supplement at all?" He said, "No, but I love the ingredient list. This is a very strong label. How is it?" So once he asked me and tried to assess what my experience of this brand is, I explained, "I love it. It does this, this, and this." And I then followed up with, "Would you be willing to review this product on your channel?" Now, I get nothing from this except connecting dots. I make no money. I have no partnerships. I have no affiliate links related to neither of these parts. But you can see that the initial relationship that I built with my local supplier is now going to tap into an entire community of literally dozens of thousands of followers on the YouTube channel. And I enabled that initial connection. They weren't speaking to one another, but because we all share the pre-workout has a common thread, we are now making together something that might be useful for all parts involved. And this is what I mean. Make sure you foster relationships, because then the strategies for community building will kick into gear and gain that much more strength.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, and many times throughout this, the previously without the internet, you had to put a lot of effort into getting bums on seats and getting people to physical locations, and you had to get the word of mouth out there, and you had sort of limited mediums, and some of those were quite expensive mediums to get people to come to whatever or follow or do whatever you wanted to act on. So that has changed. So even today with what we're doing, even in this live stream, this is something that, you know, wasn't available to many people years ago. Even recently it wasn't available. So this technology allows you to build those communities. So let's get on to the final topic of this. This is basically, if you've got everything else we've talked about in today in place, advocacy and loyalty programs start becoming something you should be talking about when it comes to your product life journey of your customer. So you need to learn how to implement the advocacy and the loyalty program that will reward and incentivize the customer for their loyalty. So understand the role of such programs in turning your customers into brand advocates. So again, advocacy programs, loyalty programs, all these kind of things, back years ago, you had to create it from scratch. These days, you've got a tool online where you can jump on to these software programs, and it's a link that you create, and then you give it to people. They share it, they do all the advocacy for you, and you have a reward program for them. It couldn't get any easier when it comes to this kind of stuff that previously. And we work with a number of brands like this that we love using the brands, but because they've got an advocacy and a loyalty program, we've just got an even more bonus reason for using them, because we love the product. So we will tell others about that product, and we will share a link to them to say, go follow this link. So it's something that you need to work out in your life cycle of your product and services. When is the appropriate time to introduce these things? So, you know, you don't do it before. Like, it's just clearly, you know, if I haven't experienced your product, I can't be an advocate, and I can't be loyal to you because I haven't experienced it. So there is obviously a journey that you need to take your customers on in the product and service pathway that you've gone on, and then look for ways to introduce it after you've had some positive experiences. Good places to do this would be if you've got a positive testimonial from them in a review, then maybe that's when you reach out to them and say, hey, look, thanks for the review. Did you know we have a loyalty program? You know, please check it out. That's a good place to start, because they're a positive review. They've had a good experience. They're probably wanting to tell others about it. And you, depending again, how you go about your loyalty program comes back to your values and morals and ethics with your business, whether it's going to be a monetary one, it's going to be a bonus thing, it's going to be an experience that you give them back. So it has no monetary value. It might cost you something, but by giving them that experience, they want to maybe tell more about others about your business or your product and service. So think about what yours is. As I said, it's not always a monetary return in the way that you incentivize people. It might be that they get something totally emotionally. It could be something that they get an experience. They may be able to help something else, a cause. There's all sorts of ways you can go about these programs. It doesn't have to be just a monetary return to you or them. So think about how that works in your process and what you do. I'd love to go into more examples, but I think today that's not really what today was all about. It's really about identifying for you what those things are, because some people just do not think about these things when they think about their products and brand. They just go about, you know, I've got a product, I've built Rome, they will come.
One-off sales, start from scratch again, go look for new leads, go look for new customers. And there is a hotbed of followers potentially waiting to happen.
Yeah,
so this is where today's session is about.
Exactly, because it costs so much more to bring on a new client than to build a relationship with an existing client and let them either do the selling for you or potentially upgrading them to another experience with something they're already experiencing with you. So hopefully today, just getting into the summary of what we've talked about, you have, in summary, found a way to understand the brand consistency. You've learned the importance of presenting your brand consistently at every touch point along the customer journey. Hopefully by storytelling your brand, you're finding ways to connect. You discovered that it has a powerful tool to create an emotional connection between your brand and your audience. And finally, with the last topics we talked about, you've looked at strategic brand engagement. So you've gained insights into how the strategic approach for engaging with your audience goes beyond just that one-off transaction. And if you're unsure about everything that we've talked about today, we would love you to book a discovery session. We'd love to understand your business and assess the state of your brand, your goals, and where you need to be. So please visit brandion.agency/brand-guardianship and book us in. We'd love to have a chat with you and talk about where your brand's at and learn more about it. How it works is we simply have a brand guardianship that we've made as simple as 1, 2, 3. You book us in for a brand discovery call, let us understand where you're at and what you're doing. Then we look at a program that works for you. We understand that one size never fits all. So together we determine the best program that suits your goals and put a plan in place. And from that plan, we onboard you and we look at ways to continually meet regularly and assign the brand guardian to stay focused on amplifying your brand. So please make sure you visit that brandion.agency brand guardianship and book us in. We would love to have a chat with you about where your brand is and help you amplify your brand. Now, next week, drum roll, please. We're going to talk about brand psychology and aligning the personality with your archetype. Now, why would you do this? Well, brand psychology aligning with your brand archetype explores the synergy between the brand's personality traits and its archetype. So we're going to discover ways how to align and enhance your brand's identity, foster audience connection, and drive success. So join us for insights into crafting an authentic and compelling brand narrative that resonates with your customers. Thanks again, everyone, for your time this week and finding a way to amplify your brand. But I'm just going to pass it back to my friend Sim just for one final word on today's session and where people should take themselves. So leave with you, Sim.
All good. Thank you for that. Let us know in the comments wherever you see this, whether that be on YouTube or Facebook, if you follow me. Let us know where you're tuning in from, where you're listening from, country and time zone. We'd always love to know these details about the people that we are trying to connect with. And I'll see you on the next week.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for helping us and look forward to talking to you next week when we amplify your brand. Thank you for your time.